Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Know What's Cooking, where we're changing the world one recipe at a time with a splash of physics. Today is day 5 of the 2022 7-day Sustainable Food Cooking Challenge, and today's recipe is probably the most versatile of any in this series. We're going to make cornbread muffins that have buckwheat mixed in as well. This recipe came about for me sort of as an accident. So cornbread, whole wheat cornbread muffins were something I made on a very regular basis when I had all my kids at home. You know, you get to that point when you're cooking dinner and you realize, I'm not completely sure I have enough food. And so these cornbread muffins were something I would turn to often to sort of something I knew I could throw together really quickly that was a nutritious add-on and added some bulk to the meal. One day when I did that, I didn't have enough cornmeal. I only had half as much as I needed. We always have buckwheat flour around because my husband can throw down an amazing buckwheat pancake on a Saturday morning. So I figured, I don't know, let's just go ahead and throw that in. And I did, and it was great. And I've made them like this ever since. This recipe is a great way to sort of add in something that we don't normally have the opportunity to eat, and that's buckwheat. And buckwheat has some amazing nutritional benefits. And buckwheat is a sustainable superstar crop. In addition to growing in suboptimal soils, it has the ability to transform soils in preparation for other crops. I'll provide a link to this, the King Arthur Sustainable Baking Guide, in the notes of this video. There's a lot of great information here. One of the posts about buckwheat highlights that growing buckwheat may be part of the solution to our declining availability of one of our critical agricultural fertilizers, phosphorus. It ends up that growing buckwheat can free phosphorus from the soil so that future crops can benefit. Okay, I'm going to use just a big bowl to combine all the ingredients. This is the bowl in my family we refer to as the fish bowl, obviously. This recipe has 3 main items in it: the whole wheat flour, the cornmeal, and the buckwheat groats. And for all 3 of those, I'm using the whole thing as it's grown. So I'm not adding anything, I'm not taking anything away, which leads to food waste. We're getting all the nutritional benefits of that. I wanted to give a shout out to Bob's Red Mill. I do not know Bob, and I don't know anybody in that organization, but I think it's great how they have really infiltrated normal everyday grocery stores with these whole grains, these foods that we used to eat a long time ago that kind of fell off the list of things we eat that now are available for us. So next time you're at the grocery store, I'd encourage you to look for some of these things. There's some like ancient grains, for example. This is a type of a wheat ancient grain that you can just cook like as a rice replacement, which is pretty great. There's always directions on the back of the bag on how you can prepare them. Okay, I'm gonna make a double batch of this, which I almost always do. I think I found that it takes like 5% more time to make a double batch, and I get twice as much stuff, and these things freeze fantastic. And so again, it's another gift to my future self. If I put a tiny bit more time in now, I get a lot more. Not to mention I've heated up the oven, so I might as well load it with a whole bunch of stuff so I don't have to heat it up a whole nother time. That's a great energy saving strategy. So for a double batch, I want 2 cups of 100% stone ground whole wheat flour. And one thing I love to do is put these kind of ingredients that you scoop in these big wide mouth containers. It's a pain to scoop flour out of the bag that it comes in. It always makes a mess and spills over the edge. Dump it into a big wide mouth container and it makes the cooking process a lot more fun. You can kind of fluff it and make it nice and light, and then level it off and put it in the bowl. To that, I'm going to add 1 cup of cornmeal. And 1 cup of buckwheat flour. If you don't have buckwheat flour or can't find it or aren't feeling quite this adventurous, you can also just add in another cup of cornmeal. So the same amount of wheat flour as cornmeal is what the original recipe was, and I've just changed it out to add a little bit of buckwheat. So if you've never seen buckwheat before, these are what buckwheat groats look like, right? They're really kind of cool, and you just grind them up and turn them into flour. All right, to this I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. As always, all the ingredients and recipes are in the notes of this video and also in the blog for this entire 7-day series. All right, that's all the dry ingredients. So I'm just gonna mix those together first before adding the wet ingredients. All right, once the dry ingredients are combined, I'm just gonna make a little well in the center and add my wet ingredients. And that is 2 cups of milk. And I'm sticking to regular dairy milk here, but this is certainly a great opportunity where you can try some other non-dairy milks. We're gonna also add 4 eggs. Huge shout out to our chickens, including Eleanor Roosevelt and Amelia Egghart. It was COVID-19. We were bored when we were naming our chickens, but they lay these beautiful eggs, which certainly you could also find at a farmer's market. And last, we're gonna add 1/2 cup of oil. Okay, now I'm just gonna use a fork to kind of whisk these eggs and these wet ingredients together in the middle before I incorporate the dry ingredients. Okay, once I feel like the wet ingredients are combined, then I'm just gonna start to mix in the dry ingredients. One of the keys with these batters is not to over mix it. I wanna mix it until it's just combined. Okay, that looks about perfect. A little bit of lumps are fine. So now we just want to quickly fill our muffin tins and put it in the oven. All right, I decided to have a bit of a cornbread extravaganza and make these muffins in a lot of different forms. I like cornbread to have a really high crust to middle ratio because I love that crispy crust on the outside. And I think one of the things that does really great with that is this stoneware muffin pan. I've had this pan for over 25 years. Cannot even imagine how many muffins have come out of this pan. But as with any stoneware, like a pizza stone, it's the same material, or cast iron, these only get better with time because they become more and more seasoned, and they have this natural nonstick coating on them. So I adore this pan. A little bit of oil, there's no paper liner necessary. I also would like to use these cast iron little corn cob muffin pan. Looks something like this, right? Super cute. They all look like little corn. So we're gonna give that a try. Talk about a high edge to middle ratio, right? That's really great. I'm gonna make some in just a traditional muffin pan with some paper liners, and then I'm also gonna make some in this like little mini muffin pan because again, these are really great snack items as well to sort of grab and go. So for all of these, I'm gonna add a little layer of oil. You could use some kind of purchase spray oil, but I really like these spray oil bottles, and I usually use canola in them. One of the keys is that before you put it away, you want to release the pressure, because if you keep the oil under pressure, it goes rancid much faster. And so this is a really easy way to sort of just get some oil into these cavities. If you don't have a spray oil container, just some canola oil with a little silicone brush also does a really great job. You want to just make sure we get this oil into all these cracks and crevices. Even if I spray these, I typically tend to come back and give them a little bit of a brushing as well. And for these aluminum muffin pans, I'm just going to put in some paper liners. All right, time to pour in the batter. For a standard size muffin pan, I found that 1/3 cup scoop works really well to fill about the right amount. And I'm just changing to a tablespoon scoop for these corn ears. Try to stretch the dough out. making sure we're making enough space for it to rise a bit. I'm just going to fill 5 of those, so I have enough batter to make these a couple of these mini muffins as well. Just scrape all the final parts out with a spatula so we can get every last little drop of batter. All right, so now we're just going to put all of these in a preheated oven. One of the keys to get a good rise in a corn muffin is to use a really hot oven. So we're using our oven on convection mode at 400 degrees. The mini muffins. There's the little corn cobs on cast iron. Here's my stone muffin pan. And lastly, just a traditional muffin pan. Since there's a bunch of different shapes and sizes, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. Usually takes about 20 minutes for the full-size muffins to bake, but we'll check it about at 10 minutes. All right, so I'm using the oven on convection mode. We've heard it here a couple times. There are 3 modes of heat transfer: conduction, convection, and radiation. Convection is the movement of thermal energy because a medium is moving. In a convection oven, we have the standard heating elements, but we also have a fan. And so that fan is just circulating that air and bringing in another mode of heat transfer, forced convection. And so the great thing about convection is that it cooks faster. You can typically put the oven down about 25 degrees lower than you would in a conventional oven. And also you can really load the oven up because again, you're constantly moving that air around, keeping a really constant temperature throughout. So you can do a whole bunch of things at one time once you have this big oven, 35 pounds of steel heated, and that helps to make that process more efficient. I think one reason why I find cornbread muffins, or even better, cornbread buckwheat muffins, so versatile is because it kind of walks the line between being a sweet food and a savory food. And because of that, it accompanies either of those kind of meals really well. Take, for example, breakfast. If you're having eggs with some bacon, corn muffins are a great accompaniment with a little bit of butter slathered on them. However, they're just as comfortable with a drizzle of honey or maybe some of my mom's famous kumquat marmalade. Fast forward to lunch. Say maybe you packed a salad with some black beans on it. These muffins make a great side dish for that also because all of the grains are whole grains. It has in itself a lot of protein as well. And now we'll go to dinner and say you're having a mixed bean soup out of the Instant Pot. I'll do a video about that sometime later. This cornbread muffin sprinkled on the top of that soup is great, or just served on the side. So you can see that they're really adaptable to a lot of different kinds of foods. Smells so good. Okay, the muffins have been in the oven for about 15 minutes, so I'm just going to take a peek at them. All right, they are starting to look really great and browning on the edges. I think the little ones are ready to come out, and maybe these larger ones just need a couple more minutes. All right, those look nice. They start getting brown on the edges. That's just perfect. Our regular muffins in the muffin tin, they look totally done and perfect. Right, and so do these. I think these are great. They're starting to brown a little bit. We're just going to put them aside and let them just cool for a couple minutes. Perhaps the reason that the other ones in the cast iron need a couple more minutes is because they were on the bottom. So even though it's convection and we're mixing everything, those ones that were below all of this mass, we were kind of blocking some of that radiation. So there's a lot of different modes of heat transfer at work inside the oven. Yeah, those extra couple minutes just made sure that those are all brown all the way around. So we're going to let that cool for a couple minutes also. For this stoneware pan, I find it's best if I sort of run a knife around the outside just to kind of free them up from the edge. Again, this has been a really well seasoned pan. Seasoning has nothing to do with the flavor, but rather that we end up building up this natural nonstick surface. This happens after many, many times of baking on this, where we get those oils, those thin layers of oil, and they actually polymerize or cross-link with each other, and so they make this really resilient nonstick surface. So many muffins. Look at that, it's so cute. All right, and lastly, I'm going to try to get these little corn cobs out. This sometimes takes a little more patience. The more it's seasoned, the better. Yeah, so I think these pans need a little bit more seasoning. I'll have to do a whole separate video on how to season cast iron. I also think one of the keys is to slightly underfill it. So we see this one that doesn't have sort of anything coming over the edge, may be a little bit easier for us to get out of here without disturbing that cute little corn cob on the other edge. Yeah, so that looks really nice. So there you have it, cornbread buckwheat muffins in many shapes and sizes. Cornbread is a Southern favorite. Adding the buckwheat just adds a little bit of extra nutrient. I especially like these little tiny gems. They're really great and great grab and go, and also great for munching. You can eat it like it is. I'm gonna add a little bit of plant butter onto that. So good. Now that we're done, I just wanted to mention again why I love this stoneware muffin pan so much. And it's really because it has such a high thermal mass. You have to preheat this first. And so then it is really thermally resilient. So when you add the cold batter, it doesn't cool the pan down. And this results in an immediate high heat transfer to the batter, which results in a crispier crust. And also just kind of overall more consistent results. So I have two muffins here, one that was cooked in that pan, and you see that nice brown edge on there, and then one that was cooked in that aluminum pan that we put in a paper. And the other thing about the paper is that usually when you peel the paper off, what happens is you end up getting a lot of that brown sort of crustiness sticks to the paper, and so what you're left with is sort of has less of that crust to it. So I really love this. It's just another example of when you understand a little bit of the physics, the food actually does taste better. With all these corn muffins, now is a great opportunity to stick some of them in a freezer Ziploc bag into the freezer. It's a really great grab and go treat, or something you can just pull out of the freezer in a pinch to add a little bit more to a meal. Well, that wraps up day 5. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you back here for day 6, where we're going to be making a beverage. Thanks a bunch and have a great day.